So where I think a lot of people make mistakes, whether it's with a marketing agency, whether it's working with patients, and you could obviously use this for other areas of life, is like just on the expectation setting. If you're not clear about what you want, then the person isn't clear about what they need to provide, right? Welcome back to the Money Medicine Podcast. Today we are going to be talking about increasing your attention, monetizing your attention, and keeping the customers and that business coming back. All right, cut, boom. All right, welcome back to another episode. Super excited to be talking to you guys today about growing your business. And one of the things that we hear all the time, whether it's on the marketing side, the business side, etc., and I know Logan, you experienced it on the patient side, is like, I've tried this before. And this isn't going to be some long, drawn-out, complainer episodes, but I want to walk through like examples, I guess, with you, Logan, of times where we felt like we've done something before, it didn't work out, and then obviously having the breakthrough on the other side, we were glad we didn't give up, and then maybe some questions, some thought processes that helped us determine what we did wrong the first couple times, and then I'll obviously find the solution on the back half. So it's top of mind for me because we hear a lot of the time, especially in the marketing side, like we've worked with an agency before, we've done marketing before, it didn't work out. And I'm sure, Logan, for you, with all the consultations that you do, you hear a lot of people that say things like, I've tried taking supplements before, I've tried XYZ diet before, and it didn't work out for me. I think that's just a pain for everyone when they hear that. And you feel different, you're different, but it's like, how do I articulate that? Or, all those sorts of things. So lots of thoughts on it. So I wanted to get into that on this episode.
I don't believe there's ever been somebody who's come in and be like, I haven't tried anything. It's always like, oh, I did Jenny Craig's diet, or I did keto. I only drink water for 30 days. Everyone's tried something. And 99% of the time, I feel like they fail.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's a great point. No one's not tried something. It's like, oh, great. Never tried anything. You've been perfect. You haven't need to try it, kind of thing. That's 100% right. I think it would be weirder if they hadn't tried something already, So anyways, from marketing side perspective, and I guess I'll speak to this, the big internal belief or thought that I have when I hear that is like, I know you might have tried something before, but that doesn't mean that it was the wrong decision, even if it didn't work out, and a lot of times on the marketing side, at least, like you might have even been doing the right activities, but like the execution was poor. And I think that's what's hard, for people as well to maybe grasp, is like going to the gym is the right decision. But if like you weren't training and you just like walked in the gym, walked on the treadmill for 20 minutes and then like left, like you might have not gotten the outcome that you wanted, but it doesn't mean that the treadmill was the bad idea or the gym was the bad idea. You know what I mean? Like you were doing even the right activity. And so on the marketing side, it'd be like, you were doing email marketing, but your email marketing execution was bad. You weren't getting, clicks. You weren't getting conversions. You were even doing the right like thing within the, umbrella of marketing, but it wasn't working out. And then, you don't even want to do those little, again, subcategories within the overarching subject. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In that aspect, or in that scenario, like the pain is that you're paying to go to that gym, and then you go to the gym and you expect an outcome, and you may not give it enough time. That seems to be, I know when I ran programs before, I know I freaked out with you, and I was like, I want to say it was probably the first program that we ran, and I was like, man, I'm not getting any leads. Like, this is a waste of money. Like, why am I doing this? And I just needed to give it more time to work. And that's just like weight loss. You don't lose 30 pounds in a week. If you do, there's something going on. Let's be real.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always crazy scenarios, but people always forget to give it time to grow and actually like let it be fruitful, because it's not going to be an overnight change. Same thing with our bodies.
Yeah, 100%. I think a story or an analogy that I heard one time that I thought was really good, and I'd give credit if I remembered who exactly said it. But like, you can't double the temperature of an oven and bake a cake twice as fast and get a cake, right? Like, you burn that sucker to a crisp, it'd be, black as night, and you couldn't eat it, right? Even though you want something to go faster, like, there are just some things that you can't do quickly. Like, it's hard to build trust really, really fast with a person, right? Like, there's some things that you can do to build some trust, but the people, if you think about it, that you trust the most in your life, you've probably known for quite some time. There's been lots of iterations of instances that have led to you building that trust. So if it's like from a marketing standpoint, and whether it's doctor detailing or it's posting content and, providing value to people that follow you on social or whatever the kind of subcategory is, like, it just might take time. And so I think there's just a nature of like giving up too soon. You feel like you've been burned, you feel like it didn't pan out, but it's like you just didn't give it enough time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think I would say that is one of the key pillars in the situation of, if you're trying something new and you're rolling it out in your business, time is one of the factors. And I would say that the next kind of factor to look at is, the quality of the person that you're relying on. So is it somebody who's actually going to listen to your advice, or is this marketing agency going to really tailor it the way that you like it to be tailored, and vice versa? Are you listening to that marketing company with their advice? How many times have you seen it where you're giving the right advice, the other business is kind of like, no, this is how I want it, but you're like, I've seen this time and time work for this business. But then at the end of the day, like, if they're telling you that's the way they want it, it's kind of like your hands are kind of tied.
100%. Yeah, I think one way that I heard it the other day was like, there's a difference between like outcomes and services. So it's like, you could come to me and say, hey, Chris, I want a new website. It's like, okay, that's a service, right? Whether or not it worked is whether or not you approved the website and the website is live and you can see the site and it is clickable, it's on the internet, all that kind of stuff, right? Like, that's a service. The outcome would be if you came to me and said, hey, Chris, irrelevant of site, irrelevant of service, I want to achieve X, right? Like, that's an outcome. And so where I think a lot of people make mistakes, whether it's with a marketing agency, whether it's, working with patients, and you could obviously use this for other areas of life, it's like, just on the expectation setting. If you're not clear about what you want, then the person isn't clear about what they need to provide, right? It's one thing if you come to someone and you say, hey, XYZ marketing agency, I want to achieve X, and they don't achieve that, and they crafted the plan, that implemented the strategy, they executed, and they didn't, achieve it. Like, hey, it didn't work out. But there were crystal clear expectations. And sometimes I feel like, the biggest issue is the business not being clear on what they want and using things like, I want growth, I want more, I want lots. And these are like super vague phrases where there's a disconnect between what's lots to someone and what's lots to the agency, what's more to the business and what's more to the agency. And so I think, what we've tried to do more recently for sure is really boil down like what are we optimizing for piece, because let's get out of feelings and let's just get into data and let's get into facts and let's get into clear objectives, because otherwise it's going to be really hard for anyone to really feel like they got what they wanted, And I think the same thing with patients too. It's like when you're sitting down with them, like you're taking a look at labs, you're taking a look at, their weight, like you're getting data and you're like optimizing for outcomes, and then you have the ability to like compare over time. And if you don't have kind of data, you don't have your starting point, and then you're not tracking along the way, like it's really hard to know if you're making progress, and then everyone's just kind of in this weird, gray area, where there's just, again, it wasn't outlined, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, if there's no clear expectations, you can't, there's no way for you to say, hey, this was a success or this was a failure, because it's too ambiguous. And that's definitely something for patients, when you're talking to them about, hey, you want to lose 8 pounds. Well, how quick do you want to lose 8 pounds? How do you want to lose the 8 pounds? Do you want to eat less food and work out? or do you want to eat, more food and just work out more? Like,
Yeah.
there's a whole different gamut of ways you can do it, but it has to be cut and clear, and there has to be timelines associated. I want to lose, or let's put it in the business way. Like, for instance, myself, like, I would love to hit $30,000 worth of online sales by the end of this year. So it's very clear cut. What I want to achieve, $30,000 per month, when I want to achieve it. And then the how is obviously I just need to make content. Like, I know those steps, but, and it's sticking to those goals, right? If you're not sticking towards your piece of the puzzle, other than the marketing agency, right? That's kind of like that third pillar. And that's my belief, is if you're not doing the work yourself, you can't blame somebody else for not being successful.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that, Justin, business partner, said that I think is really, really insightful, and it might actually come from Keith Cunningham, but it's, how big do you want to be? How fast do you want to get there? And what are you willing to change from a business standpoint? And I think those are really powerful questions. And it's just like you were talking about, like, how big do you want to get? What do you want to grow? What do you want to achieve? Right? Like, change the question, but like, let's get clear on what the outcome is. How fast do you want to get there? Right? The analogy that I'd use for that is, travel. If I said, hey, Logan, get to Austin by tomorrow, you have a handful of options. But if I said, hey, Logan, get to Austin in 6 months, like, you have also plenty of options. Like, your options now are expanded, right?
Right.
And if I said, hey, Logan, get to Austin on X date, and you show up days before, right? Like, that's not the date that I told you. So, like, I'm just using that as an analogy, but like, I think there's responsibility on the business owner for sure to be clear about when they're asking for a service, when they're asking for, help, from a marketing perspective, to be clear on what the outcomes are, what the timetable looks like. Because I think the other aspect of it too is, if you just say growth, right? Let's just say you came to me and you said, hey, Chris, I want to grow X. And I said, great. What happened if tomorrow, Logan, you had $300,000 in supplement sales? Like, could you handle that business even?
No, but it'd be awesome.
It'd be awesome, but you couldn't, right? So, like, sometimes I think, like, you could flip it around and say, like, great, I know you want growth, I get it. But if we brought you 45 new patients tomorrow that wanted to book appointments, could you handle it? Yes or no? No. Okay, cool. So what's, like, our number? You know what I mean? Like, what are we actually really trying to get to? Like, what can you actually handle? And I think there's responsibility in the agency standpoint too, because they don't ask the questions and they don't really care. They're just trying to sell services. But I guess where I was going originally, maybe with this episode, was just along the lines of, like, not losing faith or not giving up because you didn't get the outcome that you wanted. And I think some of the questions that you can ask yourself, why it didn't work out, would be things like, was I clear with the expectations? Was I clear with the outcome? Did I execute? Did they execute? Did I not communicate? Did I not have, metrics and ability to have accountability? Did I not have frequent enough check-ins to where I could get a pulse on how things are going? I mean, I think there's a lot of correlation between how you interact with, like, a marketing agency and maybe how you operate and interact with an employee. And so if you bring on a new employee and you have vague outcomes that you want them to achieve, you have vague meeting schedules, you have vague kind of check-ins with them, like, that employee is probably not going to be producing as much as you want either. And so was it the employee? Was it the agency? Is it you? Like, I think there's nuance to it. But what I want to avoid, and kind of the point of this episode, was, like, not doing something, because you're not going to get there by doing nothing. You've made the mistakes. Maybe you selected the wrong agency. Maybe you selected the wrong XYZ in your life. Or maybe just the execution was poor. But don't not make the decision. Just find out what you did wrong, find out what you could do better, but still know that you can't get more exposure. You can't grow. You can't, expand your business by doing nothing, by doing no marketing, by doing no, etc. So it's like a combination of things. I'm ranting and rambling with so many different thoughts here. It's like encouragement, but, like, how to, avoid it. But I think there's just so many overlaps to that example with, like, an agency and other parts of life. And I think it a lot of times just comes down to expectations and clarity.
Absolutely. I would say, part of it is kind of back to the baseball analogy that I know we both know, but if you're not getting up to bat, if you don't bat, you're not hitting the ball. If you're not hitting the ball, you can't score. So that would be problem one. If you're not doing the service right, you're not going to
Can't hit a home run if you never swing the bat.
Right. So then, next step is getting up to the plate. Well, you may strike out 1 to 10 times, but all it takes is one solid contact hit that scores, and it may not be a huge score, but that one score may lead to 2 scores, and 2 scores may lead to a home run, and now all of a sudden, whatever your goal was, you're achieving. But you could have never done it if you didn't take the time and the effort to get to the plate to actually swing in the first place.
Yeah, I think there's a good book on this too, and I think it's called the Slight Edge Effect or something really similar. It's just like that whole, and we've all probably seen it too, where it's that graphic of like the 1%, like it's like 1% to like the 365th power or whatever. It's like 1% improvement every day. You know what I mean? Like if you improve 1% today, 1% tomorrow, and multiply that, compounded to the 365th or whatever the exact terminology is. It's been a while since I was in calculus, but like you improve like 37 times or whatever the exact number is. So it's like if the whole 1% better every single day thing is so corny, but like in practicality, it's true. And I think anyone that's built anything of substance would say there wasn't like these massive overnight, like stair-stepper moments, but there was just like steady, consistent progress that might like open doors and you have a little step and then you have another step. But like the difference between them and you is they just like committed to it every single day. And they didn't stop trying. Like they didn't quit. You know what I mean?
No, I would agree. I definitely agree. So what would you say for medical business? What should they be doing, or how should they maybe approach, even if they're just feeling out a marketing agency for some of these things that they're, just starting, what kind of questions should they be asking the marketing agency, and how would that, those questions benefit them?
Yeah, I think couple things that I don't know if I'd say like let's make a list of like red flags, but like things I would be looking for would be data in any of the kind of claims and things that they say. So whether that's like client examples with data or different metrics and different reporting to show like how things are going. Like if that doesn't exist, that's like red flag number 1. Right? If you don't have the ability to track progress on a consistent, basis, and they don't have examples of tracked progress and tracked growth, I think that's like the first red flag that I would say. The second thing that I would say would be a red flag is, does it seem like they're married to the service versus like the outcome, right? So what I mean by that is, I don't care how we get to the outcome, as long as we get there and everyone's clear around like obviously like the expectations and what will go involved in it. But like you can grow your business with content marketing and blogs and SEO, etc. You can grow your business by crushing it on social. You can grow your business by, if you had a big email list, through email being your primary like revenue, lever, right? You can do it a number of different ways. I don't care. I'll give pros and cons, but I don't have a dog in the fight per se. I just am going to articulate which one I think will get you the outcome. And so I think where a lot of businesses get burned is they hire agencies to execute services instead of like making sure that the initial conversation is a fit or not around, can they help me produce the outcome that I want? Now that comes down to also being clear on the outcome. And like I said, I think there's responsibility on the business to be clear on what their outcomes are. But I think a red flag would be if the agency never asks about like the outcome, that we're trying to optimize. I think another would be like, is everything just a yes? Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Or is there ever like some pushback? Because I think a truly valuable agency will tell you no fairly frequently on the basis of we have clients, we have data, we know what works. If you present a bad idea, we're not afraid to tell you that it's probably not a good idea. And if you just have an agency that says yes to everything, I think then that is going to set up to where you have to be the smartest person in the room, and they're not really providing value in terms of insight. They're just simply basically a hired employee executing what you want them to execute. And so you're basically saying that their book of business, their clients, have not brought them any insight, and I just want them to do what I want them to do for me. So again, I'm not sure whose fault that kind of falls on, but I think that scenario happens a lot, where the agency just says yes to everything and they execute the services, and then there's we did what you told us to do. We didn't get the outcome, but we did everything that you asked of us. And then the agents, then the business is like, well, we didn't achieve the outcome. It's like, whose fault is it? So those would be kind of some of the main red flags. I don't know if there's anything that come to mind. You've obviously talked to businesses and some agencies, in your day, or marketing people, right? I guess. Any ones that you feel like I missed?
No, I think those are the big ones. I would say something that I always try to ask whenever I meet with anyone, if it's a marketing agency, not that I meet with anyone because obviously I've always used you, so that makes things a lot easier. But anytime I'm talking to like a new rep, I always ask them questions that I already know the answer to, because I want to know how knowledgeable they really are. And so I do some research on my own. I figure out an answer to a question that they should be able to hit without like a home run. And if they can't answer that, I'm not going to use them, because then I know that they're not knowledgeable. And if they're not knowledgeable on something that they should be knowledgeable about, like, why would I pay somebody for that?
Yeah.
So I think doing even some of your own research before you talk to a marketing agency, so you understand if they're like rattling off, hey, well, you're SEO and we're going to geofence and we're going to do XYZ. Like, you should know what those mean, because they could just talk right around you.
100%. Yeah, so I think I've heard of the analogy of like a builder with that. And I feel this way too. I haven't built a home, so I can't speak for that experience, but the analogy still holds true, where if someone's building your home for you and you're meeting the contractor out and they're showing you the framing and they're showing you the foundation, stuff like that, like if you don't have a clue about, foundations, or obviously what the insulation should look like, or what the, plumbing should look like, etc., like you wouldn't be able to pick out the red flags or the issues, if they were standing right in front of you, or if you were standing right in front of it. And so I think the same thing happens on the marketing side, where because the businesses know so little, everything sounds good. Every promise never gets challenged. Every service never gets challenged. There's a blind faith, a blind trust. And then obviously there's, a disconnect between what was said and what was achieved. And that's obviously, again, responsibility on both parties. But if you do know at least a little bit to be dangerous, or know enough to be able to hear something that sounds off, it's better to be equipped and able to, have a conversation, provide some pushback, than to not know anything and then just have to take everyone at their word. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I definitely feel that one.
Yeah.
So then I guess kind of the next thing that I would say, as somebody who's tried a lot of different strategies, and I've definitely failed kind of on my own for multiple of the reasons that we've talked about. What would you say, how do you kind of correlate to a business? Like, hey, I know you've tried this before. How do you kind of walk them through the steps of making it successful? Or, if you have worked with somebody who has failed, let's say something that you worked together on, like, how do you say, well, here's how we're going to fix it this time, without them kind of being like, well, no, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to do it. Because we all know, kind of like, I always think about the image of the guy that is like mining for gems, and like he stopped just short of when he like would have gotten into all like the gems. Right. So how do you kind of work through that with a client.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna go like sales rebuttals, kind of one-on-one. I mean, first thing is like you got to agree, in the sense of like, hey, I hear you. Like, I can think of so many things that I've been burned multiple times on. Like agree, kind of in the beginning. And where I typically transition to from there is like, first agreement. Second would be like, now let me ask you, what are one, two, or maybe three things in your life where you got burned a few times, but you're glad you didn't give up? Like, would your spouse be one of those? Like, did you date a few people before you found your spouse? Right. And like, maybe you give them a little bit of a leash, or you give them a little bit of like an example of what you mean. But, whether it's a spouse, hopefully, or like food, like, dude, I've gotten bad sushi before. It doesn't stop me from getting sushi again. You know what I mean? It's like, I think you just need to break that in the sense of just showing them how goofy of a belief that is. It's like, you're going to use it in the business sense because it's maybe higher tickets and there's some emotion around it because it's more expensive than just like reordering sushi again if you got bad sushi one time. But I think you need to just show them examples of where that's not a consistent belief that they have, And so if you provide some examples, personally, and or ask them for some examples on their own end, I think they'll like bring their guard down a little bit and kind of come to the realization of like, yeah, you're right. Like, that would be goofy if I just like believed that across the board in my life. So why would I believe that just in this instance? And then I think you can, agree and be like, see, 100%, like, I'm glad that you, agree with me and like understand that would be goofy to think about for everything. And then I think you could even pull in the example of like the baseball analogy. It's like, you struck out a couple times, like that sucks, but that doesn't mean that you should stop swinging. And here's why I think our outcomes will be different than some of the things that you've done in the past. Here's where maybe I think that some of the things didn't work out. But let's not give up, and then I think you can kind of like reinforce with some positive feedback and or then obviously transition the conversation to close or whatever. But I think even for you on the patients, like, I'm sure your process looks very similar, like, hey, Stacy, totally understand the gym didn't work out. First time I went to Anytime Fitness, the lunk alarm went off and I was scared and I turned right around and I canceled my gym membership the next day. But thankfully, I didn't give up forever. I joined XYZ gym and now I feel better than I did. It would have been pretty bad for me to just think, man, I got burned at that gym. I'm never going to go again. Am I right? Ha ha, funny, transition, right? Something like that.
No, I agree. I mean, even something on one of our recent campaigns, right? We started running ads for it. Didn't necessarily get the outcome that we wanted. I put a foul taste in my mouth because obviously, like, I'm a very competitive person. I like winning. But it's just going back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, why didn't that work out?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the new strategy that we're going to go with. Let's roll with it. We're going to test it and we'll figure it out because it's just like, once again, go back to the baseball analogy. When you step up to the plate, you have no idea what the pitcher's going to throw until it happens. And then the next time you have to he just threw a curveball. All right, that's what his curveball looked like. Now you kind of know what it looks like and you can be prepared for the next pitch. It's never going to be perfect, but you just have to continue to learn.
Yeah. And this is maybe like a worldview thing, so maybe it's like deep, but I think if you took some of those negative outcomes and you just spun it in the sense of like, what did I learn from this? Or right. What good can come out of this? What lesson was I supposed to learn from this? I think that will take you to much better places than just like, man, I'm just going to take this memory. It's like burned, it's ruined, it's terrible. And I'm just never going to revisit this subject again. I think that would, of course, not be the trait of any well-established Fortune 500 company CEO. Like, that's not how they think, So it's like, if we want to, grow, not even saying that Fortune 500 or, being a publicly traded company is our goal, but even if we just like thought like that, from time to time, I think it might be just like a mental shift. And that's where I try to go. Like, we strike out, you strike out all the time. But the difference is like, we're humble enough to see where we didn't meet the mark, humble enough to ask questions, humble enough to, own up to things that could have been better, should have been better. Like it could have just been execution. And also it can't just be timing too. Like that's the other element of it too, is like you could have made the right decision at the wrong time. And so it ended up not working out. But, there could be, other macroeconomic factors or just other random things that can throw things off. Like you lose a pharmacist, right? You lose a staff member that was like critical to one of your processes, and like it just throws everything in, it throws a wrench in everything. Like you might have been on the right trajectory, and then, who knows, maybe years later you forget that was one of the reasons why XYZ marketing didn't work. It's like what did work, what didn't work, etc. So I think to put a bow on this episode, it would be, as corny as it sounds, not giving up, right? Taking what you can from each situation and figuring out what's worth keeping, what's worth holding on to, what's worth bringing with me to my next, and what did we do wrong? What was bad? What do we obviously not want to repeat again? And then making sure that with your next decision, with your next company, that you're clear on expectations, enough to carry a conversation, enough to ask insightful questions. You ask for facts and data and not things that are just feelings and opinions. And then you make sure that you have the right kind of like checks and balances in place to get reporting and feedback on how things are going. Because we do that in anything else, right? Like in life, but for whatever reason, like marketing, and in some areas also too, just don't have that. And it's clear why those are areas where people have like frustration. And the other areas where we do have those processes in place, work out much better.
Absolutely.
So anyways, appreciate you guys listening. A rant for sure, but hopefully you were able to extract some nuggets out of this episode. Again, this is the Money Medicine Podcast. We're going to be continuing to bring you more episodes about getting you more attention, monetizing that attention, and keeping those customers coming back, but throwing in episodes like this one where it's relevant, it's top of mind, it's something we're hearing out in the field, and we wanted to make sure that we put it to a larger audience and gave you any insights or any questions or any feedback that has helped our clients and ourselves. So appreciate listening, subscribe, watch other episodes, and we'll see you guys on the next one.